I'm going to call the advisory committee meeting to order at 7:33 p.m. Everyone except for Adam is here. He may not be able to join due to being on baby duty. First order of business is to approve the minutes from the last meeting. And Claire, I didn't have any edits. Did anybody have any edits?
I have one.
Great.
There is no way that I made the motion and seconded adjourning, so.
Whoopsie. Very good
Like that's an
catch.
easy one, so,
Can you, by any chance, can you just give me the line number?
yes, as soon as I find it.
It's the adjournment one.
Yeah, it's at the end.
Oh, okay, all right,
I probably made the motion. I usually end up making them. So just,
okay.
Yeah, I
There you
believe
go.
that's correct. I'm sure I seconded it, but I certainly didn't do both.
Thank you very much.
Mhm.
all right. Do I have a motion to approve the minutes as amended?
So moved.
Second,
All right. Roll call vote. Larry,
Aye.
Howard,
aye,
Marcy. Didn't get you there, Marcy.
She's muted.
he wasn't, now she is.
Public mic. Okay. Tim
Aye.
and Andrew is aye. But Marcy gave an
Then I know.
aye in the chat for the record.
Okay, so that counts, so it's 5-1.
5-0.
No, 5-0, I'm sorry, yes.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Marcy. Marcy's logging off and logging back on. So.
Chair report. Okay, updated meeting schedule. I sent out the budget calendar. We have a meeting on the 5th with the select board, a joint meeting. Maybe I'll give it a minute for Marcy to rejoin, actually. Good.
Well, wasn't that fancy?
Yeah, that's Brian put that together. But I think the question is, do we want to meet before the 5th? I think the general idea of the 5th is kind of to have an initial meeting with the select board, maybe to vote and discuss some of the less complicated and controversial budgets, our budget, or historical commission, or some of these small little $1,000, $5,000 budgets. Get some of those out of the way. Talk about what's in scope in terms of other articles that are coming forward that we know about. We should have. What'd you say, Howard?
When would you propose we do that? The week of the 28th?
Yeah, I think so.
9th, I guess it would be.
Well, yeah, I mean, we can meet just with the select board, right? And we can basically discuss them and vote and make that the meeting. Or we can have a meeting the week before, because the budgets are due in the 22nd, which usually a couple end up trickling in a couple days after that. So if we did stuff the following week, we can have a meeting and review some of the individual budgets, or we can just kind of do our budget liaison type roles, look at the budgets offline that following week. And, identify which ones we think we could have a conversation with in that meeting. And then, kind of take it off in there.
I'm sorry, let's go through that one more time. We have initial meeting with the,
Select board December 5th. The budgets are gonna come out basically the weekend of November 24th, right? So that gives you the week between that following week as an open week, the last week of November.
Mhm.
To do, any reviews or any of that stuff. Hold on, let me bring Marcy over. So the question is whether or not, and we could even play it by ear, in terms of what we get back from the budgets and if there's anything that comes up of merit to have a full meeting beforehand. So I think the two options are have a meeting the last week of November or the first few days of December, whatever that would be. Probably
So if,
the 28th. Or the 29th, maybe the 29th. Yeah, we usually meet Wednesday. So we
So-
could meet on the 29th to discuss what budgets have been submitted so far and that kind of thing. Or we can each, as we're going to assign liaisons to the budget, have people review those budgets that aren't too controversial and come with questions to the meeting on the 5th, and we can vote them in that meeting.
so just in terms of personal detail, we're leaving for some vacation on the 29th. So if you
Okay.
had that Wednesday night, I'll be on an airplane. I could do it Monday or Tuesday night that week.
Okay,
And I will be away all the following week. On the 5th, I'll be in California. I will try to attend the meeting if I'm not in the middle of, some other activity. I'd love to attend the meeting, and if I can, I will. I just can't
Okay.
promise right now.
that's fine. The big meeting I think is going to be and I think that one of the topics there is to talk about the scheduling for the January joint meeting. And that's a big one, Larry. That's where we basically go and spend all day, like on a Saturday and go from breakfast to dinner, reviewing everything and having people come in and we basically get the majority of the budget done in that one day.
But
Okay.
Andrew, if memory serves, we have all of December and January to have individual meetings with
Correct.
whoever.
So I don't know that we need that early, that meeting. But if we need to, we could keep it to the first or second day of the month. I think we could probably just go. Once we do other liaisons, I think we could just when budgets are ready, try to have people do their initial pass before the 5th, so we can come with questions or concerns so that we can know whether or not we're ready to vote or want to bring those budgets back to advisory later in December or January.
Yeah, I thought last year we brought everything later up, so I don't think we did anything on the 5th. I thought the 5th was just the select board, which is like the kickoff, and then we went off.
Correct.
After that, so.
Yeah, so I'm leaning towards just basically coming to that kickoff meeting and maybe we have a handful or a dozen kind of consent agenda item, basically budgets that nobody has any concerns of or wants to hold, advisory's budget or some of, elected select board, the salaries that whatever the $500 they each get, that's usually never an issue.
How many individual budgets are there that over the course of this process have to be reviewed and agreed to?
There are one. Yeah, I'll put up the liaison spreadsheet.
I'm at 81 minus a couple lines, so 70. Top guess.
Yeah, something like that. Sounds about right.
I'll count.
Now, a lot of them are pretty straightforward or not really a lot of meat behind them, but then there's a lot of, when we get into liaisons, you'll see the ones that we, like elected Board of Health salaries, we don't usually meet on that one. Personnel board, elected assessors. I mean, these are small ticket dollar amounts. Okay, so we'll hold off on the meeting in November. We'll plan that the next meeting is the 5th with the select board. Do we want to schedule out a meeting after that to start to have people come in? Or do you want to hold off to the 5th to do that?
You mean after the 5th, Andrew?
After the 5th, yeah.
Well, I mean, if we know that there are budgets that definitely will need discussion and review, you know, there's no reason not to start trying to get them on the calendar now.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm sure there are at least a dozen for which it's a guarantee that it's going to have to be.
Correct.
There's
A
30.
lot of the big meetings or the final reviews will be in January, but sometimes we'll have those people come in first to advisory. And then that basically the joint meeting is when we have our final review and have select board opine. So we kind of do the initial review. So the process usually, and feel free anybody that wants to do the process differently or has a different opinion, is we'll set up a liaison to the budgets that require more analysis, your DPW, police, fire, schools, etc. That liaison will meet with either the department head or the superintendent, whoever it is, review their budget, ask questions, make challenges, and then, you know, kind of understand their budget enough. We'll have a meeting with advisory, have them come in, you know, discuss what they're doing, what's new, anything they want us to know, you know, plans for the future, anything strategic, and then review their budget in general and challenge anything or suggest anything that we see there. And then that would basically go to that joint advisory select board Saturday meeting for a final discussion and vote.
So there's an initial individual review with a liaison, and then there's a committee review.
Correct.
Right.
So usually like when they come to this advisory, the liaison kind of tees it up. So it'd be like, you know, Howard, what did so-and-so committee say? And this is what they have. This is, you know, there's not too much changing year over year. Here's what you need to look at. This is what we discussed. And then, you know, the department head usually is there as well. And they'll chime in as well. But, you know, we synthesize it down and try to speed up the process by having a liaison kind of do the initial review. Okay. So why don't we plan? Does Wednesday still work for most people? That was historically the advisory day.
Probably, but it depends on. I guess we also share that with ZBA is also meeting on Wednesdays.
Yeah, they're meeting now.
Yes, but it's not every meeting, so there's a particular item. So it has to be, yeah, in general.
Why don't we earmark the 13th of December? That gives us plenty of breathing room with the holiday. That works.
Yep, that's fine.
And then we can adjust if we need to. All right. All right, so that takes care of meeting schedule. Future meeting topics.
We want to have a second one. I remember last time it took 2 dates to get through everyone. Or just want to hold off.
Yeah, I mean, we're probably going to need another one early. I think what we need to figure out, hopefully in December 5th, is when that joint meeting would be. I think we're probably going to need 3 meetings before that meeting. So if we have December 15th, if
Right.
it's late January, then we can do like, you know, maybe a first week in January and, you know, a third week in January or something like that. But if that January meeting's earlier, then we might have to condense it with an extra one in there somewhere. Clear?
Okay, so just for the minutes, December 5th would be with the Board of Selectmen. and
Correct,
then
joint-
there would
joint meeting.
be- Okay, and then there would be another follow-on weekend, the following Wednesday for the advisory people.
There would be. Yes,
Okay, and,
following week on the 13th,
Okay.
just for just an advisory meeting.
Yeah. okay, all right.
Yeah.
Thank
That's just us, or that's where we're gonna bring people in to,
We'll probably invite some people in.
Can we do that one at 7:30 instead of 7?
We can do that. Okay, and
Me
then,
again.
sure,
So at what point, or are they not gonna do this? Is there a forecast of if everything is kept level? Is there a forecast in terms of what the percentage increase would be? Or, I can't remember at what point they start putting that out, but I think that,
we should have an initial rev cap, probably. That, before that December 5th meeting,
okay,
because usually once the budgets are submitted. Brian can do one.
okay. Thank you.
I mean, he usually even does one now and just basically does like the last year budget. And some of the other figures he knows, but. We did get some good news at the tax rate meeting that the rate was a little lower than we anticipated. I think we had 13.92 and ended up being 13.91. And the average single family house was a little bit lower. The shift, we had budgeted a 16% shift. I think the shift was only 12, so. The year-over-year increase went down from 5.8, I think it was, to 4, high 4s. I don't remember the exact rate, so that was a good. But our we were pretty close on the math there.
lower is better, that's good.
Yes. All right, so yeah, future topics is gonna be budgets and articles pretty much for here on out. We'll talk a little bit tonight about some of the strategic things that the stabilization email that Brian had sent and some discussion on that. And then update on Neary School Building Committee. We've been meeting regularly on that. It's still moving its way forward. Skanska has been selected as the owner's project manager, and there is a separate subcommittee meeting to do the designer selection, and it's between 3 companies that have done it, before. I don't remember the names off the top of my head, but all looked reasonable. But so that process is ongoing. So more to come on that, but obviously that's going to be probably a 18 months away. So following town meeting is when that would probably come before everybody, but a lot of decisions need to be made, in that time on, what do we do with Neary? Do we close the school, not close the school? If we close the school, do we make it into a community center? So there's a couple parallel committees meeting on those various topics, but more to come on that.
So, since I'm not caught up on that, and we can do this another time, I guess, are we still proposing a whole new building?
So you have to run through multiple scenarios as part of MSBA. So I think for each option, it's renovate, addition, and new. With or without closing a school. So I think there's going to be at least 6 options. Some towns even do 10 or 12 options, right? Different locations and different things of that nature. So once the designers are on board, that kind of the total number of iterations and options is going to get fleshed out. But I think it's going to be at least those 6.
Okay.
Which should be some very interesting numbers.
Yeah, I watched one of the meetings. What was the thing that Skanska said the bids came back, like maybe 5 or 7 different companies on something? I forget what it was. Do you know? Like, where they're at in the process? Like people putting together proposals, I think.
I
or
think that might have been the proposals coming in for the designer selection.
9, that's right, thank you.
Yeah,
That's
and I
what it-
think they ended up with 3 finalists or something that they're interviewing or something of that nature.
Yeah, thank you. I couldn't remember where it was at. Thanks.
Yeah, so yeah, the designer has not been selected yet. But they're doing the final interviews on that. So we broke up the committee into 3 separate subcommittees too, a communications subcommittee, which is working on creating a website and getting all the information out there. There's a designer selection subcommittee that's doing that work to do the interviews of those final 3. And then there's a finance subcommittee that's myself, Kathy Cook, and Mark Davis, and we're responsible for approving the invoices and keeping track of the finances. Okay. So advisory's got a strong, strong presence on the committee.
Does that lead into, is one of the topics, and I forget, I don't have the agenda, receive that letter. I guess from the finance committee, there's an overage that could be reserved for that. Is that a topic for tonight or?
Which overage?
Oh, please.
I don't know if there's an overage for the Neary Building Committee.
No, it was to the general fund, so. I don't think I was dreaming it. Brian sent an email 3 weeks ago on 10/25.
The stabilization.
Yeah.
Yes, overage, and we had a larger amount of free cash.
Yes, and that was, there was a statement that with things like this coming up, should we put that into a,
That's one of the agenda topics for tonight. That's the discussion on possible stabilization fund creation.
oh, it is on for tonight, okay.
Yeah.
All
I
right.
when you said overage, I was thinking cost overage versus revenue overage.
Sorry, nope, just it was on my mind to see, I actually do read these things, just
Yeah,
don't
that's
have
good.
the
That's
agenda
good.
for me, so.
I was like, I thought I missed cost
Okay.
overage. I didn't know that. Okay. All right, let's work on the liaisons. Let me pull that up. I have in here who our last year liaisons were and whether or not we actually met with the department. So Larry, you'll see like some no's against, obviously advisory reserve fund. Some of these are real small dollar amounts and don't really fluctuate at all. But I figure we just go down here and, assign people again.
Do we want to give Larry some of the ones?
Yep. Larry's new to it, so we can switch stuff up. And
You're saying, give him.
Larry, you want to do MTC?
I thought that would be at least one good one for me.
Why don't we go down the list? I don't think we need to do elected select board or moderator. I think the moderator's budget's $500 or something like that.
Agree.
Select board, I think usually is pretty good.
I can take it again, or? It's an easy one, though.
Or why don't we start with the kind of the most complicated and work our way down, if that works. Let's start with police, fire, DPW.
Andrew, we did the DPW together, I thought.
Mhm.
I remember we went
Yeah,
together and
we did.
I mean, I think some of these that's helpful, like when you have more than one person, they're so
would-
big.
It
but
might be good to do DPW again with Mr. Cundiff being new. So
I would like that. Yeah.
why don't we
I'll
do
take
that
it.
one again.
Yep.
I could do police and fire again, but feel free for anybody that has any burning desire to those.
I'll take whatever's other people don't want. I'm not particular, just,
I'd like to keep council, the two council on aging and youth commission, like when you do them, you become familiar with what they are and then you don't have to start over kind of thing, but if anyone wanted to join, that would be. Yeah,
If Tim doesn't feel ownership, I'd be happy to do library.
That work for you, Tim?
Yes, I don't feel ownership. Take it.
Kim, are you keeping the schools? You seem to be something you were passionate about, so.
I don't want to own anything, so
I'm not
Anybody-
suggesting I want them, I'm just figured you were good at them, that's all.
Yeah.
I would say anybody who wants to do something should do it.
Yeah.
And we can
Anybody
fill
that
in the
wants, that has a pressing desire for anything on here, speak up. And we'll put you down. Adam said he wanted
Yeah,
to do
so
the same as he had, so.
Here's a really good example, like elected school committee, right? My youngest is in 8th grade, so if somebody who has younger kids entering the school system wants to like get a deeper understanding, take it, you know what I mean?
Yeah, my younger is 39 years old, so that category.
Mine's right behind yours, so it'd be Adam is the only other one I think, oh,
Yeah, Adam's the only one there, but
well, yours is coming up,
mine's coming up too with Adams, yeah.
Mm.
So Tim, why don't we keep you on that if that works?
That's fine.
And then Adam and I can hash it out next year when both of our kids are starting to get to that age. That's so Marcy, we could do water along with the DPW.
yeah, that worked well last time.
Larry, you want to try police or fire? That's usually a pretty good
Sure.
I would suggest why don't we put you under fire, since Chief Achilles has been through this a few times.
Yeah.
That works.
I'm gonna take police.
And I've interviewed them several times on the MTC, so.
Yep, sure.
Yep, good.
Anyone want to join me for that? Those are the two biggest right there, right? So,
Yeah, maybe if I had.
Okay.
I'm trying to push the police towards electric cruisers.
yeah, I'm not, so. I know you like your lightning and all, but
That's a discussion for the capital planning committee anyway, right?
And apparently there's a cruiser committee too. That must be as part of the department, so. I gave them my food for thought and I left it there.
Okay, so going back up.
So the accountant, audit, assessors, treasurer, collector, and select board is usually kind of like one package deal because it's all basically
I'll take them. It's one
Townhouse.
topic. If no one else has a desire, that was a pretty well thought out, easy one, so. I
Yeah,
can
we
just-
those
one
ones are
person,
usually-
so.
pretty.
Yep.
Good.
I can take town council and special legal counsel.
Okay.
Adam's not here, he gets the rest.
Yeah, Adam said he'd take the same stuff he had last year. He sent me an email offline, so.
Do we have a building department? Do we have a?
Yeah, I mean, it's basically building and facilities are one of the same. Building department is like the a lot of the utilities.
Yep.
So I could do that. That's easy enough. Civil defense, I think, is part of fire. I think that we it's under Chief Achilles, so he's the
Okay.
like the manager of that one. We'll just
Do
put
them
those.
together.
It's a stipend for basically for the emergency management person.
Got it.
That's a pretty easy one. I think it's like a $10,000 budget. EDC. I'm happy to do it again if.
I can do clerk and or town clerk if I'm in the building already anyway, I guess, right?
Sure. What other ones? Those are pretty good. Other operational support. I think this is part of. I think that budget's part of John Parents as well, so I can do that one. Tim, you want to do
I was actually gonna take IT also unless Tim wants to own it.
I don't own it. You take it.
Yeah.
It's progressing really well, IT in town.
I think we're doing pretty good. Tim, you want to do EDC?
How about
yeah.
seeing last year's liaison with the new person? We could do that.
The new person.
Never taking over. So whoever did it last year with the other one. I don't know if it's necessary for all of them, but maybe for some of the bigger ones.
I think this is the only one we have left. Is EDC. I think we're good on everything else.
I can take EDC, Andrew. If
Okay.
you want.
All right, excellent. I will save this and
Yes, then obviously send us the final copy so that we know what to look for.
I certainly will.
I knew you would.
All right. One down.
Now, in terms of process, I hate to keep dragging you into old stuff, but
Yep.
I assume we contact the individual responsible for the budget and set up a meeting, and do we ask them for a copy of their budget before the meeting for preparation? Or do we discuss it right at the meeting?
So you should have all gotten a link to the OneDrive folder.
Yeah, I did.
Yeah,
Okay,
and that's so Brian's gonna put all the budgets in that folder.
okay,
And
great.
that's where the most recent version lives there. And Claire, we're gonna try to put periodic versions of all of those on the website as well. Maybe not, update it as often as Brian does, because he does it sometimes a couple times a day. But so that's where the most recent version will always live, and basically the current working drafts of everything.
So you review that one first, and then once it's up there, they need to create a budget first, so you have something to talk about.
Correct.
Once it's
So once
there-
Brian's put like 5 budgets or so already in there that have come in. And so as they come in between now and I think the 22nd, he'll keep filling up that folder in the OneDrive. And
Yeah.
then we can just go in there and pull them out.
And then we can just start setting up meetings?
Yep. Then you just basically, say, hey, Chief Achilles, I'll probably send out an email to Brian and Mark Purple to say these are the liaisons as well.
Okay.
Sometimes the select board also want to liaise on some budgets. So I haven't talked to Andrew Dennington if there's specific ones. So in that case, sometimes we'll have joint meetings just to make it easier. But they don't. We have more liaisons than they usually do. Claire.
I hate to say as the most aged person dealing with advisory. One of the things that gets done with the spreadsheets that maybe Andrew, you can explain to them why it's not a good practice. They put a dynamic date formula in the footer, and which is not really accurate, because what you want to do is have the date that particular file was updated. Versus if you put it in as a formula, it's dynamic, so it updates every time you open up the file or print it. Does that make sense?
It does.
So
It has a last modified date if you saved it.
it.
But if you
it,
did open the file, it would be the most recent version. You mean in OneDrive?
What? Okay, so you would have to actually go into, so with OneDrive, you have to take a look at, it's not in the file itself, it's on OneDrive.
Well, it's in it's a SharePoint. So basically what it
Right.
is, there's one file there and you could even click on it and see the previous versions, but the file that's there is always the most recent file.
Okay,
And
Thank you.
Larry or Tim can explain the technology behind that much better than I probably could, but that's how my understanding.
It's
Right.
Excel. Everybody uses it, nobody understands it.
Exactly. Okay, okay, so if I skipped over, and then, so, okay, so that takes care of the liaisons for the budgets. The next one is we talked about in our last meeting, whether or not we wanted to assign people to select board goals. And so I got an updated version of the goals, which you sent out. I put my name against a couple that I might be interested in, but feel free to, we could have more than one person, or I can always remove mine, but just, this is my cheat sheet. I figured we'll just go down. Is anybody interested in the sidewalk one?
Yeah, a little bit.
And we don't necessarily have to put people against every one of these. It's just, if somebody is interested and wants to assist the select board and make sure advisory has got a seat at the table, all better for it.
I could take the next one, Andrew.
Sure.
I know quite a bit about the burial ground and town common things on the agenda.
You're pretty tuned into the historical part of this
Yeah,
town.
a little bit, but I happen to know some of the issues there.
I'm, the Oak Hill Tower and Oak Hill neighborhood meeting, I'm pretty well
Right.
tied into that one, but happy to have anybody else join me if they want to.
And you do it unbiasedly.
I voted for it, so I the 20 future use of 21 Highland, that seems to be kind of up in the air right now, but if anybody's interested in that one.
I
Sure.
follow it, but I don't need to be tied to it just yet, so.
Yeah, you can put my initials there.
All right, great.
And again, I don't think we have to fill in all of these, right? Just.
No, and this is really more of if somebody is passion or interest in something, and we can get a little bit more depth into it and assist the select board, especially in some of the financial ones. As we get further down, then great. If not, we'll just leave it blank. I put my name against this one for the old burial ground and for the cemetery space. If that anybody else.
Next two, where I think we're all watching carefully.
Yeah.
I don't
Yeah,
know.
I think these ones are pretty large. Again, I think we're more interested to see what the Affordable Housing Trust Fund does, or what community development does with the 240Bs.
Mhm.
But if anybody's really wants to be more in tune, but most of these are pretty well documented in the meetings and our open meetings. Okay. EDC and business community. I don't know if that's one that we necessarily have to have somebody on, but I think if anybody's interested in that. All right. I think this is pretty much done. I don't think it's really something that we would liaison for the tricentennial staffing of it. Staff training and abolish public works planning board. I think that's basically a select board piece, and I don't know if we necessarily need to be a part of that, but happy to put anybody there. All right. Same with job descriptions and policies manuals. I think that's a little bit outside of our bailiwick.
Yep.
And then we get into our nature of the world. Capital equipment funding, capital fund, townhouse building, capital maintenance fund. Certainly would be interested in that in terms of advisory, but anybody specifically, I'm happy to dig in on it if nobody else wants.
I think he'd be better suited definitely than me, Andrew.
That's fine. I mean, I'm interested in all of these. I'm just not gonna put my name next to all of them.
I'm sure.
This might be a good one for Adam if nobody else is interested, because he's kind of doing a lot with the benefits piece, but this is basically taking OPEB and bonding it. Which we should have done when rates were lower, but that's a different story.
Why are we bonding it?
A lot of some towns are doing it just to accelerate it and
I thought we were following a policy where we were putting small amounts aside for a long period of time, and we had a final date that was acceptable to everybody, and everybody was happy.
I think that the plan that we have in our auditor's plan and the actuaries is to your point is to pay whatever 250,000 to this period of time, and then our other contribution, I think, to the Worcester Retirees Fund or whatever it is, stops at a period of time, and we can use that fund to kind of catch it up. But it's something that I think the select board's looking at. I'm not saying I support it, but it's something they're looking at.
I'm trying just to understand it. You know, the pro seems to be we accelerate. There's no real need to do that though, and the con is that we're paying interest. So I don't understand it. Maybe there's, is there anything else around it? Did we get something from an auditor or from the state?
I don't know, to be honest with you.
Okay. I mean, we haven't really talked about this in a while, but the last we talked about it, like my understanding was that our auditors were very happy with our plan. We were one of the few towns that had a plan.
Yeah, I think they weren't. I think they thought we weren't contributing as much as other people, but our plan to get there seemed logical and wasn't too risky.
Got it. Okay. Well,
Although it seems that if interest rates were back down at 1%, bonding it and sort of taking it off the table as something that's continually dealt with would potentially make sense. But with interest rates where they are right now, I don't believe it would.
Yeah, maybe we'll just monitor this. They're gonna have to come to us anyway to discuss it, so maybe we just handle this one as a committee. CPC surcharge, I've been spending a little time doing that analysis, and we did the one last summer to talk through it, but happy to add anybody else to it if they want to be involved.
I'd say reach out. I mean, as you know, I served on the committee for a number of years, so happy to join you if you need help.
Good. Grant writers.
Does anybody need information on that one, the CPC one?
I'm happy to dust off the presentation we did a while
Maybe
ago.
send it around to everybody.
Sure. I'll send it around again. And I did have a conversation with Ben Smith to have CPC kind of start to take the lead on that and see whether or not it would maybe make it to the next ballot or not, but some traction happening on that.
Do you still have the chart on, the state's matching rates?
Yeah, I updated the calculation. I have a one pager I put together just to
Okay,
keep
and is it still projected to be steady?
the match.
Yeah,
The match is gonna go down this year. Well, they're forecasting it to go down because of less housing sales.
Okay.
But in the past, the state has also added money to it. So
yeah,
nobody knows what it's gonna end up being, but people are starting to say it's gonna come down a little bit because, you know, not as many sales this year as in prior years. And Larry, I'm not sure if you're familiar, CPA funds are funded by the recording fees on real estate transactions. So more real estate transaction makes more fees, which makes more money for CPA.
Didn't know that. Okay.
But right now, for background, and Larry, we covered this off just before you joined, so I can give a quick background. We've pretty much exhausted our bonding capacity for projects with the townhouse and the library and for the Garfield House. And so, you know, if new projects come in, of which we have a lot on the horizon that are, you know, CPA eligible, we're kind of running out of funding. So one of the thoughts, you know, we had talked about was increasing the surcharge from 1% to 3%. And when you get to 3%, the state has another round of matching. So you know, most towns get an extra, say 10% of match by getting to 3 versus 1. So it's not just you get 3% more from, you know, surcharge in the current match, you get an extra round of match when you get to that 3% number. So it can be, I think the calculation I had done is if we had done 3% originally, we would have gotten an additional almost $6 million in state match. So free, you know, money from the state. But you know, we've been at 1%. So grant writers, I think, you know, more to be seen on what Sam envisions there, but happy to put somebody to discuss it with Sam if they like.
my only caveat there is, you know, be careful of what you wish for, right?
Yeah.
Because you incur an obligation, and that doesn't mean you have the staff to actually do it.
Correct. I have heard them talk about this and being very cognizant of what happened with the park and other grants where we get the funding and we're not quite ready to either implement or have a real target for it.
Weren't they trying to share that position across multiple departments, originally? So EDC and selectmen and whoever.
Well, they talked about trying to have a person like an FTE. I think Sam's idea is more of a contracted service, you know, more, you know, hour, you know, paid by the grant. I know we've seen some for like the fire grants where they charge you a flat rate of, I don't know, $1,500 to file it for you or something like that.
Right.
But I think, you know, kind of, and I think it's also when he says focus areas, I think the conversation was you have people that like understand FEMA grants and people that understand, you know, MassWorks grants, and there's different specialists that understand different programs. Financial projection model to 10 years to include NERI project. Certainly something that I'm interested in understanding, and certainly definitely something this committee needs to look at and understand as we get into that project. But
You look at it as a committee, or do you want to put one person to?
why don't I put myself down just to if Kathy needs help working on it,
Yeah.
and then we'll certainly bubble it up.
Yeah, I think it's
That's what the town did and advisory did. And Claire, you might remember when they did the public safety building to make sure that wasn't gonna kind of kill the finances for the next 10 years or 20 years. This next one they already did. That's what we took a vote on. Remember when we asked them to do the financial management and policy review, which I think is supposed to start in December. So more to come on that. That should be interesting to see how that report comes out. I don't know if committee simplification is really something we necessarily need to get involved with, but certainly if anybody has any passion for that. All right, IT kind of liaison here on this goal. I think we have a couple people that might be interested in that one.
Did we get the senior IT hire they were asking for? Or did we push that off till next year? I never know.
That's one of the discussions that we need to have with them in terms of what they're talking about, but I think that's to be determined.
You can, if nobody else wants that, you can put my name by it, but I'm happy to.
Adam was interested in the communication one. And some other ones if we wanted to put them down. But I thought he'd be good for that. Regional dispatch, which we've obviously discussed in length from last town meeting, but there's still Al and Sam are still kind of carrying the torch on that one.
Again, I think that's gonna come back to all of us at some point.
Yeah, I think that's, yeah, I think your point there. I don't know if I would like to reach out to if they're gonna come up with joining an existing one. I know they've gone on some tours lately.
Mhm.
That if it's gonna come to before town meeting, I think advisory would, I would like to see the dispatch center and learn more than just, the usual.
Right.
But I think maybe we could cross that bridge when we get to it.
I'd be interested in this one, Andrew, the project tracking, the next one down.
Oh,
I
yeah,
could-
okay.
I can do regional dispatch too, but yeah.
Yeah, well, I might just put myself there just to make sure they keep us more informational so they can keep me in the loop and we don't break any open meeting laws.
Project tracking is interesting because it's written in the sense of project management. But I wonder if it should be more of a governance
Mhm.
sort of activity, because it's explicitly calling out the select board as the customer here. I don't think that they really care to look at project plans, but they
Yeah.
would very much care to have a governance process in place so that they have a better understanding of what the status is of their projects, with specified metrics.
Yeah, and I think they say agile, but as most people,
That's why I'm.
they don't
talking.
know what I think it's to your point, Tim. It's more tracking, budget tracking, being able to define exactly what's going into what project, where it's at, there's a lot of stuff that just kind of, we don't know what status it is, when are we going to close it out, what's remaining,
Right.
Old budget articles, are we gonna do that work and so we can close it out? Where is that project at? What's left to do? Who's holding it up? What are the tasks? So it's probably more waterfall than it is agile, but I think,
Well, I would say it's neither. I would say it's governance.
Yeah. I think governance and tracking and escalation.
I would just add a comment to that. I think I spend too much time watching town government meetings, but my sense, and I've spoken a little bit, I think, to Kathy in the past about this. My opinion, I would say, is that select board should be supported well enough that they can focus on larger picture items and not be so down in the weeds on every item. That's my 2 cents. If you watch any other town meetings, select board meetings from other towns, you will see that the town manager and support and auxiliary staff do a lot more talking than the select board. And here it's the opposite. You can watch an entire meeting and you never hear anyone but select board speak. And so anyway, I have a personal interest in I feel like there's a huge streamlining effort that could happen in support of the select board and the goals that need to happen in the town. I mean, I think it flows, like you're saying, Andrew, sort of like a waterfall, right? Like the more efficient you are, the more you get done, kind of thing. So anyway, my 2 cents and why I was wanting to volunteer.
No, I think
There's
that's
a lot of history there to unpack. You probably, maybe you already know it.
No, I don't necessarily know it. I've only been in town since 2019. I'm
I'm
coming in with a
certain,
fresh
yeah.
set of eyes, maybe.
I'm certain Claire could let you know. I was actually on the final. There were 3, if not 4, town manager legislation committees. I was on the final one with John and Al. And there's so much to having, you know, the select board's role versus the town admin versus the town manager, and this town, you know, what was it? It was in 2010 we did this, I think. And back then, this town had hugely strong opinions on what they wanted from their town and their select board. And maybe that's changed, you know. But it was a hot item.
Well, I certainly don't want to misspeak that advisory has a major role here. It's just my opinion. But
Yeah,
I
no,
appreciate that perspective. You know.
Yeah, and it might be worth bringing it forward. And I think a good person to talk to, other than Claire, if you want to talk to, there are a lot of people on the select board. Al would be a great one.
Yeah, but I think to your point, Marcy, you know, they should be looking at it from an executive perspective, right? What project is in the red, right? Other than that, you know, we shouldn't have be bringing it up, right?
Right, and so that was the guidance that town meeting gave to the select board back in when this happened. I think it was 2010. And the idea is that the select board would vote every year after election to empower the town admin with town manager abilities, right? But in our town, it all still resides with the select board. And if the select board wants to get into the weeds, I wish we still had John Rooney's presentation from back then, where he went through every item that he had to deal with because of the role of government. I mean, he was listing out things like figuring out what brand of detergent to buy for the police station so that they can wash their blankets, like crazy low level stuff. And we've come a long way since then, but you know, maybe it is time to think about the next level.
All right. And here's a couple of the other additional tasks that they had there. Most of them didn't have select board people attached except for the bottom few. I was interested in the whatever non-tax revenue source ideas they had, mostly just curiosity. But the other one was maybe the ARPA funds one. Well, that's more on the select board to make sure they do it, but if anybody's interested in keeping an eye on that one maybe. All right. Looks good. Thanks, everybody. Save that. Stop sharing. I'll send all this out after the meeting. Discussion of possible FY25 stabilization fund piece. So everybody saw Brian's email, which basically was talking about the fact that this year's free cash is higher than it has been in the past. And I think everybody, Larry, do you have a general idea of what free cash is, or do you want me to explain it a little bit further?
Well, I sort of know what it is in the context of a business. I'm not sure what it is in the context of a town.
It's basically every year we budget how much like local receipts or revenue we're going to generate.
Yeah.
What free cash is basically what we have left over, from what we budgeted for revenue and what we actually got for revenue, right? So it's basically excess income, retained earnings.
Okay.
So it's, usually it's budget turnbacks from different departments, right, that didn't spend their whole budget. It's mostly we're pretty conservative with our revenue budget forecast, so that if we have a bad excise tax year, we're not going to be having an issue of not having enough funds from a tax perspective.
Is it like retained earnings in that it's accumulated from year to year?
So we basically roll it into the next budget year. So what we have, we start with that amount of money.
So we potentially reduce the amount of revenue we'll need in the next year if we have.
Correct. We basically start the following budget year with a slug of free cash.
Got it.
Which, you know, is great, but in the past, it's fluctuated quite a bit. So you might start in the next year down $600,000 or $300,000 from the prior year. So you're starting in a hole. So one of the things we talked about before you joined, when we were talking about different stabilizations, is possibly a free cash stabilization, which you would basically, you know, as you can see here, like the certified key cash as a percentage of budget, you could pick a percent, right? Say you wanted to do, I don't know, 3.5%, something like that. Anything over 3.5, you could push into a stabilization account. And when it got below 3.5, you could add it back in to kind of always keep it at 3.5.
So that would substantially reduce, in some cases, eliminate the shock of a down year.
Exactly.
In terms of the contribution of the free cash to the
To the
budget.
following year's budget. Yeah.
Okay, that makes sense.
So I think, you know, they're thinking about, I think Brian's thinking about it more from with the school project, whether or not we want to increase our stabilization to help with that. I'm still under kind of the John Butler thought process of, you know, we'll pay for it when we need to pay for it. And, you know, we have stabilization for a rainy day fund, but the free cash portion of this, I think that could be utilized for free cash.
Were the slides that you sent out about the stabilization fund and the memo, were they written by John?
The slides I did,
Okay,
the stabilization policy paper was John.
yeah, that sort of sounded like John. Okay.
Yeah. We've reviewed this.
Are we talking about this tonight?
It's on our agenda, yeah.
Hmm.
No, I don't think we need to vote on whether or not we want to do anything, right? It's just, it was brought to, you know, with Brian's email that he's thinking about it and wanted to bring it to our attention. So I figured we would at least have a conversation about it.
So I don't mind the idea. I don't know if earmarking it specifically for the school is the right solution, but I actually kind of like the stabilization fund idea. I'm enhancing that to offset rainy days, because I think in the future, we're gonna have some bigger bills with that. Just gonna raise if we can offset those with that.
So Andrew, correct me if I'm wrong, but there was a real problem with the stabilization fund for the schools in that once it was established, town meeting lost control of it. If I remember correctly, with the regular stabilization fund, you can't appropriate from it without a vote at town meeting. But if the district gets a stabilization fund, the district votes to pull money out of it. So town meeting loses control of that.
Yeah, I don't know what Brian's proposing in terms of the actual stabilization fund, whether it's using our existing stabilization fund and just adding more funds to it, because we haven't put anything in that in a long time. But we also haven't taken anything out of it. I mean, we went through, you know, COVID years and that kind of stuff without needing to touch our stabilization fund. So I you know, maybe he was thinking adding it to that, which of course we have control over as town meeting. I think, Tim, what you're thinking more of is along the regional.
Yes.
Yeah, which we don't. Yeah, regional is its own town, right? Anything we give them, they have their own authority to do it. Which is where, yeah. So I think this would be more within K through 8, which would sit within the town perimeter.
Okay.
So
Thanks.
it would be more, you know, more within the existing stabilization fund or a new stabilization fund. I don't know if we need a new stabilization fund specific to the school project.
And I'm not suggesting that either. I'm suggesting.
Yeah, but I do think, you know, we had talked about last year or the year before, last year, that free cash stabilization idea, which I still am kind of in favor of smoothing that out with a couple $100,000 here or there. But I think we need this, we need to also see what the budget's gonna look like, right? If this is a heavy capital year or something, then maybe
Yep.
we don't have that free money to do with, but at least it's worth a conversation. So, I mean, I think maybe we just table it for now and keep thinking about it as we see what the budget's gonna look like for next year and keep it as an option if we get to that point. That work for everybody?
Yes.
Mhm.
Alright. Okay, now let's talk about. Our budget. So I basically kept, as I put together a draft of the budget, obviously we can all change it, but we should vote on this so we can send it to Brian. We didn't spend all of our contracted services last year, mostly because we didn't meet nearly as many times as we had previously and for as long of a period of time. So we're a little more efficient with our meetings, so we didn't need to spend all of that money. So I basically lowered the budget a little bit. And I kept the reserve fund flat. I think that's probably more of a conversation if we meet and review the budget, or if anybody needs something special like we had with that printer a couple years ago, maybe we would increase it, but I think we haven't spent any last year. So keeping it at 180, I think is fine, but wanted to open it up to the committee and see what everybody thought. So
Andrew, what are our dues and memberships? I can't remember.
that's the
Okay.
AF Association of Town Finance Committee membership.
What do we get from that?
We get access to some documentation and we get to go to their quarterly meetings and annual one. I didn't get to go to the annual one this year, but I did last year.
Okay,
And the $200 bill.
And I think I think Brian also gets some additional documentation or assistance with different financial topics from that committee as well. But they kind of charge it to us because it's kind of related to us.
So can you explain, please? It says the reserve fund is 180 and then other charges is another 180. Totaling.
I think that 57840 rolls up into that roll up point.
Okay, that's the
You
card.
can see how everything in the other three roll up to the 4200.
Yeah, I don't have it as. Yeah.
So it basically is anything between 52,000 GL and 58,990 roll up into other charges and expenses. So it's just. This should really be bolded because it's actually a roll up point.
Okay, that makes more sense. Thank you.
Yep.
And the reserve funds. We haven't touched, you said, so we'll keep it.
We didn't touch it at all last year. It's been 180 since I've been on advisory. It's been, we increased it to 190 one year when we were holding $10,000 for a printer, but we didn't end up using any of it last year. So
How much of it have you used from year to year over the last few years?
So we used 33 in FY21 and 93 in FY22.
Oh, I see. Oh, those are the actuals. I see. Yeah.
Yeah. Yep.
should we, if we're not planning on using it, should we lessen that?
Well, I mean, the whole point of the reserve fund is you can't plan on it, right? It's emergency. Nobody saw it coming. So I think keeping it flat, is good.
Yeah, I don't think even 30 grand isn't gonna move the needle anywhere, so.
No, I mean, I wouldn't make it zero. And
I wasn't proposing zero, and I'm thinking power wise, even
Yeah.
150, but then it doesn't.
Right.
It
I'd
doesn't.
rather have it and not need it than need it and not have it.
I'm with you.
All right.
Just talking it out. That's
Oh,
all.
that's good. It's great. There's talk about increasing it at one point in time just to do, you know, and then be more stringent with the budgets. But I think we're pretty good here. Anybody want to edit any of the numbers?
What's covered under miscellaneous contracted services?
That's Claire.
All
For
right.
minute taking.
Not sure there's much else to talk about for that. I think that was every time, so.
We don't have a very large budget. It's a. It's usually
Not
pretty,
very many line items.
And it never gets all used up on me either, so.
Yeah.
And we're, this year, it's, on track. If you look year over year at this time, this year is substantially under. For a couple reasons, less meetings up, plus the meetings have really been shorter. So I didn't want to have a guilt trip, so I didn't charge as much.
yeah, so we lowered it based
Talk
on
longer,
that.
is that what you're saying? Talk longer?
We'll just take like a 2 hour long break in between our meeting and then come
Thank
back.
you. Appreciate that.
All right, is there a motion to approve the advisory draft budget as shown on the screen?
So moved.
Marcy got it first.
All right, didn't see you.
All right, Howard seconded. All right, any discussion? All right, seeing none, roll call vote, Larry,
Aye.
Howard,
Aye.
Marcy,
Aye.
Tim,
Aye.
and Andrew is aye. All right, excellent. Finally got that done. And any other business properly brought forth? So I think just to recap, we'll have the meeting on the 5th. We'll take a look at the budget folders. If anybody has any issues or access issues getting into OneDrive, or Larry, if you have any questions looking at the budgets, feel free to reach out and I can walk you through them and how the budget spreadsheets work and, you know, all that kind of stuff. I'll send out the spreadsheet on the liaisons and the select board goals. And then I'll send it to the select board and Mark Purple and Brian, et cetera, on the liaisons too, so they can let their department heads know that we'll be reaching out.
2 questions, please. One, you'll send out an invite for the 5th?
I'll send out an invite for the 5th. I gotta
Mhm.
double check with Andrew Dennington what time he wants us to. I think it's dedicated to us, but occasionally they squeeze something in and I don't really want to.
And that's in person or on Zoom or both?
You could do both, I think. I'll probably try to go in person, but it's a hybrid, so I think you should be able to join online as well.
Mhm.
And like I said, I'll be in California, so it's 3 hours earlier from whatever time it's scheduled, but if I can break free of wherever I am, I'll attend that.
Thank you, Larry. All right, public comment. Seeing no hands raised. We have a motion to adjourn.
I think Howard should make the motion and second it.
I'll make the motion to adjourn. How about that?
Howard makes the motion to adjourn and Larry will second it. All right. Larry,
Aye.
Howard,
Aye.
Marcy,
Aye.
Tim,
Aye.
and Andrew is aye. Thanks, everybody.
Have a great night.
Good
Right
night.
on.
Good night. Bye-bye.